Welcome to another episode of the Pennock Knockdown, a podcast where we unpack key strategies and tactics for digital marketing leaders. Today, I am joined with Evan Sargent. She is the founder and CEO of Leap Your Branding. Evan, so excited to have you on the show today.
I'm so happy to be here, Nikki. Thanks so much for having me.
Evan, I always like to start off hearing a little bit about how our guests have gotten to the role they're in today. So I'd love to hear what brought you to found Leap Your Branding.
Yeah, so I always knew I wanted to do branding. I've been doing branding since I was 10. I remember doing like stationery for my grandparents, like coloring their names on on like 50 pieces of paper identically, and then giving it to them as a gift, things like that. So I actually it started at a very young age. All my, I would do like branding for my high school teacher's fishing business, and you still see his truck like driving around where I live with the brand that I did in high school on the truck. And so it's funny, but I didn't go straight to being an entrepreneur or a branding agency owner. I ended up in advertising, which was interesting. I loved design and kind of the formal aspects of design, but when I landed in advertising, I immediately fell in love with ideas and sort of the power of communication. And so that changed everything. And I really sort of hustled, and I did the New York City ad agency thing for about 10 years while having my 3 kids. So I was sort of like building this career in advertising while also like going on maternity leave and commuting really long commutes on the subway. And I wouldn't change anything. It was a really intense but amazing time in my life. But after my 3rd baby, I quit I was at one agency that whole time for about 8 years. I left and I went on my own, and I really never looked back. So I loved the agency world and everything that I learned, but it's big and corporate and there are so many layers, and I really wanted to work with clients directly and be able to help them solve their problems. And so I freelanced for a while. I did everything for everyone under the sun and really burned out a little bit. So it was in 2018 that I started my first agency, that I really went into full-on entrepreneurship. And I've been an agency owner ever since. I've had 2 different agencies. This is my second one. And it's been amazing. And yeah, that's pretty much how I got here. And I choose branding because I just think it's so important. And when I would have clients come just for a marketing campaign or for a marketing execution, a lot of times there would be an issue with the brand. And so I would be, even in my corporate times, if we couldn't get our hands on the brand and there was a foundational issue, the marketing tactics just wouldn't work. And people would say, oh, it's the wrong this, it's the wrong that, or the creative wasn't good enough. And it would be always a deeper issue. So I really came back to that original love of creating brands.
I also started this agency after my 3rd kid, so I can relate to your timeline a lot. And I also appreciate the time you spent agency advertising side, because I think just some of the structures and frameworks of how to work with clients, just so hard to understand if you haven't done agency work before starting your business. So I think that was a really smart move. Now, I want to pick for a second. You said like sometimes you were finding in your first agency and then your corporate job in New York at an agency that something was wrong about the brand. Like, can you extrapolate more? Like, what do you mean when you say something is maybe wrong with the brand? That I mean,
I wish I could remember a really juicy example from like big advertising, but I'll just make one up. It would be like, say I'm working on a bank. We're doing a campaign that is sort of fun and edgy, but it isn't working. Like, it's not performing the way they wanted it to perform. And if you step back and look at the big picture, you can see clearly why that is, because, say, this bank, their brand just isn't edgy. They've never been edgy. They're just sort of blah. They don't stand for anything. They don't have a strong brand platform. They're just another bank.
Yeah.
So nobody cares. Everybody's seeing right through it if they just throw up a commercial that's funny and edgy and quirky, right? It doesn't even make sense, actually. So that would be an example.
Got it. So in that instance, it doesn't necessarily mean that like the logo is off or the color story is off. It's just more like you have to position the brand to start making the movement towards being edgy and something different that it just hasn't had in its past.
Yes, and that's a great point, because I talked a lot about, right, making logos and making stationery, but having been through this like ad agency gauntlet, right, I learned so much about the larger meaning of brand, and so much it's just, I see brand as just everything that creates perception in the world about your business. So it's like their logos and colors might lend to that, but it's sort of everything they're doing, the way they're presenting themselves in the world is creating an impression that makes people feel a certain way about the business.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. So we have a little bit of the understanding of where you are now with the branding lens on. What types of businesses are you serving?
So we work with healthcare, tech, a lot of service businesses, and also wellness. So I know you talk to a lot of people in the beauty industry, the product industry. We work a little bit less with products. We sometimes do, but I think that the branding conversation is very universal across all products and services at a high level.
That makes sense. Evan, when you think about the verticals you're working in, tech, healthcare, wellness, are there any trends in terms of just, new product launches, other changes in the industries that you're servicing that you're really excited about?
Yeah, well, healthcare is really, really wild right now. And since we work with healthcare and tech, of course, there's also health tech. Like the whole healthcare, health tech situation is bananas. It just with everything sort of up in the air about um health insurance and government stuff, that's one aspect. Um but even before, it was really everything's really crazy in healthcare right now, because large hospital systems have basically, everything is really centralized in large hospital systems. And so the patient experience is terrible, and healthcare is expensive, and less is covered. People are seeing their doctor for 2 minutes, all this stuff that you hear about. So it's actually an amazing time and opportunity for disruption in healthcare. And so we've been working with some really cool healthcare clients who are disrupting, whether that's like concierge medicine that's bringing a luxury hospitality experience to primary care, right? Or a fertility clinic they know that fertility care is almost never covered by insurance anyway. So they're creating a more accessible, lower cost offering for people who are paying out of pocket, but they don't take insurance at all, just not even messing with insurance. It's all very controversial. It's all very interesting. And there's just so much opportunity for disruption.
Love it. Great. I'd love to kind of move into the work you're doing with the brand you're working with now and, maybe speak to us a little bit about what it's like working with you rather, for your average new brand coming on. Like what types of things are they having you help them through?
Yeah, so we have a really cool process. It's something that we're very proud of. So a lot of brand agencies, brand strategy and branding has a little bit of a reputation of being sort of fluffy, or being sort of esoteric, or taking a long time, right? There are, and bless them, and a lot of traditional brand agencies have quite a long strategic process, and quite a long creative process, right? And they say, we need to take the time to get this right. And we actually disrupt that. We don't believe that that is necessary. And we believe in capturing the creativity and the innovation that happens at the beginning of a project and just really harnessing it. So we work with our clients in 1 day facilitated sprints. And so we have different, depending on the need, we do like 1 day or 3 days or 5 days together on Zoom. We're hopping often on Zoom, but we basically present work, we revise and repeat and revise and really collaborate with our clients in real time. And then we're able to get a lot of decisions made quickly. And so we really deliver brands in a condensed timeline. You know how much it's going to cost and how long it's going to take exactly. And it's really fun and collaborative. And we have very happy clients who can sort of get back to running their business and have this new brand launched.
That is amazing. Yes, having worked through branding with a few of the businesses I was in-house with in my past life, I do know what you were speaking to about the length of time and attention and all of that goes into it. Not to say your sprints don't have the attention, but this is amazing. 1, 3, and 5 day sprint. So once you get through this sprint, is the project complete, or are you picking up additional parts of the branding world for the brands after that?
So when we do a sprint or a series of sprints, there's a lot of work that goes on before and after and between the sprint days. But the work is focused around those sprint days. And then after, a lot of our clients do stay on with us on retainer. And then we move to a little bit more of a traditional model there where we just do ongoing, support for them, whether it's design, copywriting, marketing, email, all that kind of stuff.
I'd love to hear about some red flags or experiences. And I guess being in the service-based industry myself, sometimes, the client should be right because they're paying you and they want to hear what they want to hear. But sometimes they're just not right about what they want. And can you maybe tell us about an experience where you encountered something like this and how you dealt with it and what that meant for the business as you guys parted ways after the branding exercise was over?
That's such a great question. I feel like since I started working in this way, it almost never happens. There's something about, and this is for people who run a service-based business, right? There's something about creating a process and they're buying into this process that creates so much trust that most of the time, and I will come up with an example because it still does happen, but most of the time our clients are like, "Oh, that's great. We trust you. Let's go with it." We don't share a bunch of different directions, like sometimes two, sometimes one. We don't share. I used to do, 3 to 4 directions, right? Before we had this model, before I created this process, I would present 3 to 4 loose directions. And then I'm giving the client a lot of work to do. Like, here, look at these. Tell me which ones you like, which ones you don't like. Take your time. So I'm giving them this work to do that's actually making it their job to have a lot of feedback, or they might even feel like they're not doing their job if they don't have a lot of feedback. And so when I used to work that way, yeah, we might get a lot more, even just the thing of like, I don't like any of these. Like give 4 directions and they don't like any, whereas now we do one and they almost always like it. So it's a really interesting question. But we did have someone recently who did push back, but it was really interesting. He was pretty great about it. He was sort of like had an idea and he was like, "I think I'm right. And I don't want to just assume that you're right just because you're the marketing agency." He's like, "I think I'm right, but I'm going to listen to you, but I'm also not going to assume that you're right." And I was like, "That's fair. I love that." Like you and I will do the same. Like I'm open to you being right. And also there isn't one right answer. So at the end of the day, I just trust that, you know, we're going to make you happy and it's going to work. And if it's really not going to work, I'm going to fall on my sword about it a little bit more. But if I think, okay, it might not be what I would do, but I trust that it's going to work, then we'll go with it.
I love that. I now I'd like to go on to the best, maybe even strangest outcome where you're like, I'm gonna go out on a limb here and totally brand in a way that is a bit of a risk. Like, I'm not sure if it'll work. Have you had any instances like that where it's just sort of like, maybe a little makes you feel a little nervous?
I usually feel excited when it's really different because I just know that it's going to stand out no matter what.
Yeah. And how do you measure or do you do any sort of measurement of that once the brand goes live? Because, we usually start working with the brands after they've established their identity and their look and feel. And so, yeah, to the point of what you spoke about as we got on the line today of just sometimes campaigns don't work because the branding isn't great. Um, you know, had we been involved earlier on, I think there were times where we could have helped steer what brands were about. And so, yeah, would love to kind of have you dig into an experience that went exceptionally well.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you kind of have to do the brand. Although I'd love to get more and more into, and this is happening, more and more collaborative with marketers to even be able to do some testing during the branding process. That would be really cool. But that said, kind of the way we do it now, you've got to sort of do the brand based on a hypothesis, do the brand based on what's in your heart, what's intuitive. You're looking at competitive research, you're looking at things, but it's intuitive. And then the branding, you change it every so often, right? It's not stuck in stone. They used to say your brand should last 7 years. That's another thing that we don't agree with and don't think is relevant anymore. Like, we actually offer, with all our packages, we do a quarterly tweak. Like, we'll meet quarterly for the whole year, and that's included just to make any little changes. Because basically, you build your brand and then that's done. And then you enter marketing, which is like a lifetime of testing, a lifetime of tweaking, and like a lifetime of trying things. And so you've got to start with the best foundation that you can. And then, yeah, test like crazy. And I love campaigns too. Like when the brand foundation is good, like that bank, for example, the imaginary bank, if their brand had been edgy and it had made sense, then they would just try all these different things, but it wouldn't be like, oh, this just isn't working because the brand foundation isn't good. It's like you have the solid foundation that at least you and the people around you trust that it's good.
Yeah.
From there, you're just like testing forever and trying things and making things get better and better and better.
So does this mean then, like in the quarterly regroups with your brands, you are starting to look at the data and you might say like, hey, this one particular like hook or theme of talk track seems to be resonating best. Let's make a little bit of a turn in that direction. Is that kind of the reset moments that happen at the quarterly basis?
Yeah, absolutely. Things like that, right? It might be like, no one has ever visited this one page on the website, get rid of it. And then it might even be, this has never happened, but maybe, if our clients are doing more rigorous testing, it would. Sometimes it's a little bit of an audience pivot, right? They find, they had these 3 audiences, primary, secondary, tertiary, but they found that who they thought the primary was just isn't working, but actually the tertiary one is working really well. So does that mean there is a little shift in the tone overall of the brand, a color shift, a font shift, those things as well?
And what's your point of view on, like, stark changes for a brand? Because, like, as a consumer, part of me thinks, I don't know if I'd wanna notice. Like, I'd want it to be so gradual that I wouldn't catch it, but then on the other side, like, seeing, like, the old Pepsi logos and the new ones, it's kind of fun to, like, look at their, changes over time. Do you have a position on how brands should approach changes and how subtle they should be versus
Yeah, I think we're so inundated with brands now that people just don't notice.
Yeah.
A stark change, though, should be, you're doing it because you really, really need to for some reason. Especially with products, if you're working with products on the shelf,
Yeah.
that's huge. Like when I see a stark change on the shelf in the grocery store, sometimes I'm offended or it hurts my feelings or so even right? Like when you have real affinity with a product, I think that stark changes should be done with real intention and care.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. What predictions do you have? I mean, we're well into 2025 already, which is crazy to admit. Looking ahead for the rest of the year, maybe into future years, what are you predicting what will kind of change in in the shape of the world you're in, the brand you're helping, etc.?
Yeah, everyone's talking about AI and it's true. Like we use it a lot of things that humans can do. But I think that people will always need help with their business. And so for that reason, I'm personally not worried. It's like I see us doing, as things get more, well, this could go two ways. Okay, so things get more, it's like robots can do all the design and copywriting. Okay, okay, great. Then maybe I'm doing more strategy, like more, and then that stuff is more automated. But also, I just can't imagine that art is ever going to be replaced. Then it's like, I think there will be backlash and then there will be room again for really unique art that's created by humans.
Yeah, our team was just reviewing a study about trends from Q4 and even Q1 or Q5 rather of 2024. And brands and consumers seem to have a little bit of a reaction to AI creative because it's already out there. It's already maybe becoming saturated so quickly. And like, it's just kind of not something people are excited about, especially as they're like catching it. And I think, everything I'm seeing on my TikTok and my personal streams are about how to produce massive amounts of content without using a human. And I just feel like, should all of us like plug that in tomorrow and start being content machines? Like, it's just going to be so saturated and noisy, and I don't even know if I would use social media if both of our brands are producing, like, 40 pieces of content a month, like, I'd have no reason or a week rather, I'd have no reason to be interested in my brand or your brand transparently because it's just, like, too noisy. Uh, so that's kind of one of the things that I think, humans are gonna have better control over what's right. So I'm with you in that prediction for sure.
That's such a great point. It really is. And right, the creative, and by the way, full disclosure, like I don't use it for copy or art at all yet. For admin, for strategy, brainstorming, that kind of thing, for taking meeting notes and turning
Yeah.
them into stuff is amazing. Um, yeah, so that you're absolutely right. That's so funny. It's like right now people are like, "How do I make more content?" But very quickly that will no longer be the need and the pain point.
Yeah.
It will be how do I make content that anyone cares about at all?
Right. I know.
Right.
I know. Well, I think I want to get into so we did a little bit of 2025 and 2026 predictions. Um, what's your favorite part of your job?
My favorite part?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love working with clients. I love strategy. I love helping people just get clear on who they're for, get clear on what are they bringing to the world and what is unique about that and how do we make it really unique and really disruptive and what's the big idea And then the most fun part, what's the personality? What should it look like? What should it feel like? What should it smell like? What should the colors be? The fonts? How do we take that big idea and share it with that audience in a way that they're going to know in 3 seconds? Because it's like that 3-second impression that someone's going to get when they go to an Instagram or a website or whatever. How do we make that, like, create that feeling?
That's great insight. Evan, if you were a young adult again, like just getting out of college, starting out, what advice would you give yourself about being in the branding space in the industry you're in?
Mm, interesting. It's so funny because it's like I always feel like, oh, I wouldn't change anything that I did. So I would almost just say, like, go forth and do what you were already going to do, because I messed around for like 5 years after college. I lived in Europe, I lived in Russia. I always did like enough like sort of graphic design sort of side projects that I had a portfolio. I didn't feel like I was, my mother was like, "You're never going to be able to get a job." And I was like, "No, no, like I'm going to be good." But I love that about my journey. So I feel like I would tell her, like, go forth. You're on the right track.
That's amazing. Well, I appreciate that advice too, because, sometimes being that inner critic and really critiquing every move of your past can be so exhausting, right? So I appreciate the feedback of just kind of follow your intuition and go. Well, Evan, it's been great to have you on the show. I mean, from starting to brand and do letterhead and all that fun stuff for your grandparents as a 10-year-old to now founding and being the CEO at Leak Your Branding is really, really impressive. If people want to get in touch with you, where can they find you?
My website, leapyearbranding.com, and LinkedIn.
Wonderful.
Evan Sargent. You can find me,
Probably the only Evan Sargent out there.
probably.
All right. Well, Evan, it's been a pleasure to have you on today's show. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Nikki. It's been so great chatting with you.